or their garage. And those trailers, those boats, RVs, whatever you want to call them, are blocking the view and can be dangerous. There's also those that park on the street and they block the view, specifically on corners. They block the view from being able to see on a corner if a car's coming or not. They park it on the street. The next door neighbor cannot see because the traffic is being blocked. So they can be a hazard. And as far as using a trailer for an ADU is not the way to go. That's not sanitary. You need to have the electricity in there. You need to have the plumbing in there. You need to have all that. So I know that you guys would not, I hope that you would not try to consider something like that. But I think you should go along with the recommendation of the Police Chief Reynoso and abide by what the recommendations are. He's the expert. He's been out there. He's been doing this for a few years now where this has been coming up. We had the ordinance come up, 5 years ago, I think, when I first spoke about this type of subject. Granted, it is an investment for these individuals. It is money that is being spent, and these toys are very expensive. But we also have a shortage of storage in the city of Hollister and in San Benito County. But there are other alternatives instead of having them in their driveways or having them. Some of them are able to actually have enough property on their sides of the house that they can actually push it back so that it's not in the view, and not so much about a view that's ugly, but a view where it's prohibiting an individual from making a right decision to back out of their driveway, or to maybe there's a kid on the sidewalk, you can't see the kid riding their bike or a person jogging. So it's a hazard waiting to happen. So thank you.
Thank you.
Those are all of the public comments for this item.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Morales. So I would like to make a motion to approve with some revisions for council's consideration. Paul, thank you for having the ordinance available on the screen. If you could roll down to E2, and in essence, E2 talks about the need for a cover, and I understand that part of the reason from the original presentation spoke to wanting to make it more difficult for people to live in RVs. I don't necessarily know that that's a real factor. I can certainly understand the concern, but also a cover would cover the license plate, and ultimately, if it's covered, then there's no legal way short of a warrant to get the license plate number off of the vehicle to identify the registered owner. So I see this as a hindrance. I also don't think our code enforcement or our law enforcement should be the good housekeeping police specifically, although I know sometimes they get caught up in these situations. And so I would like to recommend to council that we remove E2 and just eliminate that element. Moving forward to E3, talks about the setback of 3 feet from the garage. And I thought I heard our fire marshal say during the last presentation that that really wasn't a concern. And so if I heard that correctly, and I believe he's in the audience now, I would like to have that removed as well. Moving forward to E4, talks about parking parallel in a driveway. There was a photo that was presented to council for a property that is located at the corner of Valley View and Sunset. And we were told that it restricted the entrance into the garage, but what we weren't necessarily told was that's actually a second garage for the property, and the people are able to park their vehicles in their primary garage. And ultimately, that's the only one I've seen, and it has always been there. It would come and go periodically. As a result of the ongoing conversations, it has in fact disappeared, but it was well maintained, and it was parked parallel, or actually, no, it was parked horizontal in the driveway. It required a lot of work to get it there, but I really don't see where that's a major factor. And so I'd like to recommend that that be removed as well. And then I too had a question on item F. regarding parking permits, and I too was wondering, I thought that if you paid your registration fees, that gave you the legal right to park a vehicle on the roadway, a public roadway, for up to 72 hours. And so if in fact that's accurate, then I don't know how this city as a general law city could circumvent the state law in regard to that. And so for me, that's an area that needs to be further researched in my mind. Moving on to number 4, permits and the 10 days. I have some real concerns about that, as Council Member Perez has expressed. On to item 7, F7, where it talks about traffic cones required. I understand maybe the perception, but I also have concerns about liability. So if we require people to put a traffic cone out at the front and the back of their vehicle in the street, and that cone gets hit as a result of us requiring it to be there, do we have any exposure or liability as a result of that action? And so I would pose that to our city attorney. And then finally, under section 4, under fines, what it says is that the amounts of the penalties for the code violations imposed pursuant to this chapter shall be set forth in the schedule of penalties established by the city council. And so, however, when you go and you look at that schedule, if you look at that specific code section, it really doesn't talk about the fines or penalties. But if you further mine the Muni code, what you'll find is the proposed fines would be under 1.16.020. That initial fine would be $100, second fine would be $200, and the third fine would be $500 for every day they're up to for the remainder of a calendar year, or not a calendar year, but 363 additional days. And so those fines were established in 1997 based on the ordinance that I read. And so I'm really wondering if the fines meet the crime. And so for me, at the end of a year, if somebody ignored this thing, dirty math, they could potentially owe the city about $180,000, and that's just ridiculous. And so I think that I could vote in favor of this if we can answer the questions that I've raised, but I'm thinking there may also need to be some more work on this before we pull the trigger on it. And I would also, I know that it's not the council's prerogative to direct staff on not to enforce, but I do know it's the city managers, within the city manager's authority to direct staff. And I think that this needs more work, and I recognize that this has been kicked down the road for 5 years, as I understand it, and I appreciate the will of this council to take this head on. But I don't want to rush to get it to the finish line to simply say we're done and we move on, because obviously at some point people thought it was done 5 years ago. 5 years later, here we sit dealing with this. And so that would be my ask of council. Finally, I would assume with only 3 of us here, it would take all 3 to align to move anything forward. And so, no? I'm sorry, I'm seeing heads move, and so.
So I did want to make a general comment, Councilmember Burns,
Okay.
that the ordinance as written was reviewed by the city attorney's office, and that review includes ensuring that it complies with all state law, ensuring that it's internally consistent and also consistent with other city ordinances. And then we typically review for clear language and making sure that it's not ambiguous.
Right.
So from the perspective that you brought up a couple of areas where it may not comply with state law, or it may pose some risk to the city, that has already been reviewed. That being said, the city council is certainly welcome to make revisions if a consensus of the council wants to do so. And this is the first reading, so if there are material changes to what's written, we would just bring it back, or staff would bring it back for another first reading prior to the second reading.
So I guess based on what I've heard you say, minus something that the city manager or the chief could persuade me on, I think that would be probably my recommendation to this council, to make revisions based on the council's direction and then bring it back for a rereading for the first time. Thank you. Appreciate the time.
Vice Mayor Morales. If I could just comment, the tarp or the covers, although there's some gentlemen here advising that their vehicle looks nice and presentable and don't have any issues with their neighbors, we're making an ordinance for the entire city. And not everyone has this nice trailer, and some, to avoid the blight, there are covers. We wanted professional covers. The language was added for tarps because there is a possibility to make them uniform looking and not create the blight. But if you want to remove that, that's fine. The 3 feet from the garage, that is something that the fire chief requested. I think the comment was that there is no specific law that requires that, but that was a recommendation of the fire chief. Now, if you want to remove that, that's your prerogative. Recreational vehicles not parked horizontally. You advise you saw one, and then you don't know if it's that common of a problem. The problem is going to be in accessing the garage if there is a fire, if those vehicles are parked in a horizontal way. And there's multiple, and it increases the blight when you have vehicles parked in a direction where they're not usually parked. So that's why that was there. But again, if you want to remove that, that's fine. F4 permits, there is an ordinance currently at the city that says you are not allowed to park your trailers and your motorhomes on a public street unless you're specifically loading and unloading. So that is a current ordinance. So this permit process allows for those residents to request that permit so that their vehicles won't be ticketed or fined. And as regards to the limits, that's still your prerogative. If you want to increase the number of permits per year, that is understandable. And the traffic cone, we have some of these trailers are pretty wide, and as you see, all the utility vehicles, a lot of utility vehicles put out a cone. Your cable guy, your AT&T phone person, they put out a cone, and they put it out for safety. This ordinance required or requested a 12-inch, a small cone to be put no more than 5 inches away from the corners of this. This is just something to allow those vehicles as they're approaching to understand that that vehicle is a little wider than in most cases of a car. And that's why that was there. And as City Attorney mentioned, this was reviewed by them. It was modified and made, actually sounded better after they got through with it, and appreciated all their input on that. But any of those changes, if you want to make, those are the reasons why they're there. But it's up to you if you want to make those changes, or if you want us to go back and bring this ordinance forward again next council meeting.
Do you have any comments?
Yeah, I'd like to thank the staff for working together on all this. I know I brought this up a while back. The cones, I think, are a good thing. Even when I used to park my trailer on my grass, I would still put out a cone just for people not to hit their knees on it and stuff, because that hurts. But the covers, I can really go either way. I've seen covers that are pretty bad. So it's, in fact, I need a new cover for my jet ski. So they can get and look actually worse than just looking at the vehicle. So I can go either way on that. The number of permits, I would say 15, and anything after that, it would have to get a special permit. Something to that effect. The horizontal, I park my vehicle, and of course, properties have different, everybody knows they're all different shapes and sizes. I always park, I'm one of those guys that park in backwards because I always want to leave quick, because usually they chase me out. But that's just to me. I've always, from limo driving. Anyways, if anything's blocking the view of any neighbor or resident, you know, it needs to be addressed, whether it's just temporarily or where they park it permanently, because I know I come up to a stop sign and you have to sneak out there to get around that big 4x4 or whatever truck vehicle that is in the way. What was the other one?
Fines? The fines?
Fines. So our fines right now are 100, 200, and 500.
Actually, if I may add for that, the city attorneys provided me the document. It's actually 250, 750, and 1,000. And it's not on the schedule. It's on a resolution that was previously passed by the city council. And I'm trying to find it right now, but it does specifically address this ordinance in that section.
Okay.
So,
And then I guess, you know, I know this is, people are going to start talking about, well, what about the, does this also include the cars, the project cars, the trailers, what do you call them, the pods? You know, I know we have a permitting fee for that, and I think that one's way out of, the fees are way unbalanced on that one too. That's something I've always said that we need to really address. But I think it's something that's needed to be talked about for a long time. I'm glad we almost got in front of it, and that's all I have to say. I'm not sure if we can actually come to a conclusion tonight because of so many questions.
So let me ask, it sounds like council's interested in this item coming back with some revisions. I share the concern about the fines. I think if the so there needs to be clarity in terms of the resolution and what Mr. Burns found. I think that needs to be really clarified. If that is a daily fee, that is going to be a considerable amount of money for our residents. I think on the other issues there is consensus. So if what is the pleasure of the council?
Yeah,
Mr.
I believe we did, I'm looking at the chief, did you get your direction that you needed to making adjustments? Because it does appear that it needs to come back for a new first reading.
The other thing is about that, you know what? There's only 3 of us here, and there's more opinions out there than just ours. I'd like to see us have a full council all the time, but I mean, I'm coming in and I'm in pain right now, so it's like I'd like to see that everyone try to make it to our council meetings, because these are important decisions, not just for this issue. It shows us that we're getting things done here, and especially when the not so smaller issues are taking so much time that the big issues nobody wants to deal with. And you know what, it's awesome to see, I don't know if anyone else has noticed, but our seats are getting more and more full. And the public interaction with our council, that's what makes our city really good. So
Chief, do you need further clarification from the council on this matter? Do you have enough direction?
if I can just confirm, I will be forwarding you that ordinance that says that the fines are 250 and 750, but I'll forward that to you later tonight. And recreational vehicles, so no cover or cover? No cover. The 3 feet from the garage?
Chief, hearing your comments about the fire chief, I'll respect the subject matter expert, and I'm fine with that.
Okay.
actually, because you know what, I thought we were talking 5 feet, and then we went down
We
to
went
3.
down to 3.
Yeah.
We went down to 3, yes.
Yeah, I thought that was
Originally, he did say 5, and then
Yeah.
he reduced it down to 3. Horizontal or parallel park? Do we want to make that restriction or not?
I personally do not.
Well, this is, yeah, you can always come back. If this is, anything doesn't work, we can always come back. But for now, when I bring this back, do you want this included in there or removed? The requirement for it to be parallel to the roadway in the driveway? He's
Mr. Burns?
He's in, no.
Ms.
remove
Perez?
it. Okay. Councilmember Bettis, you said 15, the number of permits per year. Is that a number that's agreeable to the rest of the council, or would you like to increase it or decrease it?
Mr. Burns?
I'm fine with 15 to, again, Chief, like you said, after we have some data, we can reassess.
Yes, always.
I'm fine with
15.
15 as well.
Okay. And the cones on the roadway at the edge of the trailer, if they're parked, when they're permitted and allowed to be parked on the street.
Based on what the city attorney has weighed in on, I'm fine with them.
Okay. I'll bring it back with the removal of those items and also including the literature and the documentation for the fines that is included in the resolution. So I'll bring it back at the next council meeting, if that's okay.
Thank you, Chief. For the city attorney, the fine thing really is troubling to me, and a resolution, I guess, that I didn't know existed. And it's my understanding that the council has a sole authority based on a review of the code to establish what those fines would be, as long as they don't circumvent state. And so I would like maybe for the attorney's office to work with the police department to give us some other fines.
Yeah.
They seem excessive to me, candidly.
Yeah, so council adopted those fines, and so they can certainly amend them. It might be helpful to have a sense of what you would think is an appropriate fine, if that's something that the majority of council could provide. If not, we can propose something and come back.
Yeah.
For your
I
approval.
think, as Councilmember Perez alluded to, the fact that we are 3/5 of a seated council, I think it would be good to maybe just get in
Anything.
some recommendations, because I don't want it to be a slap on the wrist, but I don't want to have somebody file bankruptcy either as a result of parking their RV in their driveway. So,
Okay.
thank you.
I think that's the part that I really am excited about, because knowing the staff and knowing the condition of us RVers, that, you know what, I have confidence that they're gonna come up with a good resolution in the beginning so that we don't have to even get to the fines.
So do we need a motion with direction, or are you fine proceeding as we are?
There's no motion required, so as long as staff has what they're looking for.
Okay, thank you.
I have the direction. So.
Thank you very much. We are moving back to public comment, I believe. Is that correct? Okay. Thank you, everyone, for being with us. This is the time for anyone in the audience to speak on any item not on the agenda and within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council. Speaker cards are available in the lobby, and they're to be completed and given to the city clerk before speaking. When the city clerk calls your name, please come to the podium, state your name and city for the records, and speak to the city council. If you're joining us via Zoom, please click on the bottom of your screen to raise your hand. If you're joining us via Zoom using a cell phone, please press *9. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes with a maximum of 30 minutes per subject. Please note that state law prohibits the city council from discussing or taking any action on any items not on the agenda. City clerk, do we have any public comments?
Yes, Vice Mayor, we do. The first is from Peter Kehoe.
Come on down. I was just telling them I don't think I'm gonna make it. Wow. Good evening, city council members. This has been very instructive to my wife and I. We just moved here about a year ago last week on the 10th. And I'm a consumer of medical services. For whatever reason, God has blessed me with a lot of problems. And I'm used to, we're from San Jose, and I was in Palo Alto with Palo Alto Medical Foundation and Stanford. I had the best care, but it costs a lot of money. And my wife is a lot better off than I am. But since we've moved here, I've been in Hazel Hawkins 3 times. And she's been there for less, a couple of times. And two things. We love Hollister. Best move I've ever made. I'm a big city boy, and I retired a few years ago. I'm a former social worker for the county. I'm a licensed mental health therapist, and I will be working soon in this area part-time. But we're trying to get involved, in the coming out of ourselves a little bit now that we're settled in. And the timing is crazy with the politics and the weather and everything. And but the Hazel Hawkins thing really gave us a jolt, because, I'm facing the prospect of getting helicoptered out of here if something happens to me. You know what I mean? Are you crazy? You got a beautiful 25-bed hospital up there with the best staff. I got to tell you, and I'm a critic. Trust me. I give it to them if I have to, if I feel it. But on the other hand, I got to say, when it's great, it's great. And Hazel Hawkins has really impressed me. And to hear that they're going to rip it out from under us because of some financial monkey business, I don't know what's going on. But I'm thinking of starting a GoFundMe for the damn place, And we can't let it go. And I know we tried to go to the meeting. We got enlisted the people at Hazel Hawkins to notify us of all upcoming stuff so that we can get out there and shout out for Hazel Hawkins at these meetings. And we got canceled the other day because of the flood. And I'm also a Red Cross volunteer and all that stuff, Katrina, So we weren't able to go there. So we said, let's go to the city council. And it's your city, right? Our city now. So what are you guys doing about it? I want to know, because I don't see updates anywhere. I'm trying to get online or go into this news, Hollister news and stuff, and looking around at Hacienda Square. I joined it. I'm doing my best to try to catch up, but I still don't see nothing. So are you guys working out and stuff and trying to do something to make, I think we got $3 million, right, from the state on a loan, but that's $7 million short, and they still got to pay the loan back. So what's going on? And are you guys doing something about it? Do you talk about it? Oh, I'm so sorry. Hey, story of my life. I'm Irish. It's not my fault, okay? All right.
The next public comment is from Marty Miller.
Good evening, Vice Mayor Morales and council members. My name is Marty Miller, and I'm the developer for the Twin Oaks active lifestyle community here in Hollister. My purpose tonight is to request a hearing on the development impact fees Twin Oaks is currently being charged by the city. The city commissioned a development impact fee update study in May of 2019. The conclusion of that study was that occupancy densities, i.e. residents per dwelling unit, are the most appropriate characteristics to use for most impact fees. The fees imposed should be based on the land use type that most closely represents the probable occupancy density of the development. 2 years ago, I came before the council and requested a hearing to review our impact fees, which we believed were too high based on our estimate of household density, which at the time was 1.67 seniors per household. A planning staff member spoke at that time and assured the council that the low density that we were experiencing would ultimately increase and to the point where it would be equal to a traditional single-family household in Hollister of 3.53 people per household. Based on staff's recommendation at that time, council denied our request for a hearing. We have now sold 84 homes in the community, half the final build-out of 168 units. And our occupancy density is currently 1.63 seniors per household. In order for the density to rise to the traditional single-family density of 3.53 residents per household, the number of occupants per home for each of the remaining 84 homes to be sold would have to increase to more than 5 seniors living in each of our 2-bedroom homes we are currently selling. Therefore, now the council implemented the fee update study recommendations. And based on that, I think the only question to be considered is which is the most appropriate estimate to be used for the occupancy density of the Twin Oaks project. Therefore, I respectfully request the council put this item on the next council agenda available so that we may have an opportunity to properly present our data and justify our request for a reduction of impact fees. Thank you.
The next public comment is from Victor Gomez.
First, Vice Mayor Morales, I just want to say welcome to the young couple that moved to Hollister. I love seeing the new population here and our residents. We got plenty of houses to sell down here. Taking off my developer hat, I do want to just share some information with you and welcome all 3 of you, and then I'll reach out to Mayor Casey as well and Councilmember Resendez. But I'm here wearing my Goodwill Silicon Valley hat. I'm a board member for Goodwill Silicon Valley. We have 18 stores between Hollister and Palo Alto. I've been on the board now 6 years, and I'm your only representative, board representative down in our area. So I'm happy to advocate for the needs of our Hollister residents, Gilroy and Morgan Hill generally. And so first I want to invite all of you, including Brett, David, to visit our sorting facility in San Jose, learn more about our company and what we do, our nonprofit, and really the impacts in our mission that we do as Goodwill Silicon Valley. In addition to that, I've been having discussions. I don't know if you've visited Goodwill in Gilroy and other locations in San Jose. We do have career facilities as well. So we've set up computer labs to help those that have been previously incarcerated or have dealt with drug issues and so on and so forth. I'm hoping to implement something like that here locally at our Hollister location. So I look forward to maybe having that conversation with you when you visit us in San Jose. Last but certainly not least, I was having a conversation with Assistant City Manager Marioni this morning, and on a different topic. And he says, "Hey, Victor, aren't you on the Goodwill Silicon Valley board?" And I said, "Yes, I am, amongst a bunch of other things that I do, volunteer." And he said, "Hey, what are your thoughts on what's happening with the recent floods in our area?" And I was like, "I know exactly where David's going on this one." Put in a phone call to our CEO, and I just wanted to share with you publicly today that to start off, we will be preparing at least 200 gift certificates to be used by our local residents that have been impacted by the recent floods. So if you know of them, please either send them my way, but preferably I would ask Brett to please let me work with him or David. And then I've also notified County Administrator Ray Espinoza as well, because I know a majority of those flood victims do reside in the county. But we will be contributing these $50 gift certificates for any individual that's been impacted by the recent floods. And if 200 isn't enough, we're ready to keep printing. So you have our commitment here locally. Our Hollister store is one of the busiest stores out of our 18 stores in Silicon Valley. And so we're very happy with that. We receive a ton of donations as well that get distributed system-wide in Santa Clara County and San Benito County as well. So again, I welcome you to visit us, and we're happy to provide the support for our community.
The next public comment is from Sue Logue.
Finally, public comment. Yay! So nice to see you all. Susan Logue, Hollister. I just wanted to say hi to all of you back and those of you that got back again. And Rick, you too, and of course, yeah, Rick's still here. And Mia Casey, of course, I wanted to say hi to her and welcome her. With the Friends of the Library, we continue to work into the community. And I'm also with the Coalition for a New Community Library and Resource Center. I'm co-chair with that. We're very happy to share that the library will be expanded. Thank you very much to a grant that Nora has written. 9.9 million will be put into the library, and we'll be getting an actual renovation of the library. We're at the site that it's at right now. So we're very excited about that, and I know Nora's planning for that, and we're just trying to help out as much as we can. So we'll probably be looking to the city for maybe some help from the city also, because we're very concerned about the interior of the library once it's done. So we'll probably be coming and hoping to speak to you about that and work with you. I think there was a library ad hoc committee. I'm not sure where we stand with that now. Maybe we'll be able to find out as we start with the new board here. So thank you for that. And just in general, anyone new, welcome to Hollister. And there is a meeting on Monday night at the Vets Hall in regards to Hazel Hawkins Hospital, if anybody would like to know. It's at 5:30 on the 23rd. So I'm sure I'll see a lot of you there. So thank you so much, and it's great to see you all.
The next public comment is from Monica Abonce.
Good evening, Council. My name is Monica Ponce. I'm the recycling coordinator for San Benito County Integrated Waste Management. I just wanted to take the time today to invite you all to our upcoming biannual Green Business Mixer in partnership with the San Benito County Chamber of Commerce. This mixer will be held on Wednesday, January 25th at Jardines de San Juan in San Juan Bautista. The event will begin at 5:30 p.m. This mixer is intended to recognize all recently certified and recertified green businesses here in San Benito County. So we hope that you can join us in celebrating all their hard work and commitment to both our community and the environment. Thank you.
The next public comment is from Elias Salinas.
I need my glasses because I cannot read my own writing. First off, I'd like to start off with thanking City Councilman Rick Perez and Mayor Mia Casey for the work and the information that they did with regards to the flood victims, that they were out there trying to help. I'd like to, Maria Spandry from the Vets, Linda Lampe, and Supervisor B. Gonzalez were all active in that. And I urge the council members to please communicate with the Board of Supervisors and trying to work together and trying to help our community. Most of the victims, or all the victims actually from the flood, are all county residents out on Lover's Lane. And the poorest of the poor were affected. Those are people that they're renting small trailers to live in, and they've lost everything. I was reminded by Sarah over at the food bank that this is just the beginning. Those people affected, and this rain is going to affect the farm workers because there's not going to be, it's going to be delayed. The spring planting is going to be delayed. We're going to have more people in need. So please be aware of that. When the food bag comes for you, please be generous to them any way that you can. They helped over 60,000 people, and not as individuals, but on a rotation basis during COVID. They were very, very helpful, and they're a great resource for our community. We already know we have a housing issue, and with all these people that have been displaced, they have nowhere to go. I have 7 families right now that are communicating with me that I'm trying to find a place for them. So if any of you know someone who's got a vacancy, and it has to be at a low rent. It can't be $3,500 and it can't be $2,500. We're talking about indigent people, but they need a place to live. Unfortunately, in my opinion, the response was not 100% done correctly. They're going to have to do some Monday morning quarterbacking on what happened. But the worst thing for me was the fact that we have a place in San Benito County where to take the animals, but we did not have a place where to take humans when they lost their homes. Please work with the county with regards to the hospital issue. Watsonville, within 1 year, was able to create a hospital district to be able to buy out the hospital and restart again, and that was with the help of Senator John Leard. So I would encourage you to use your positions with it as city council titles. They pick up your phone calls and ask his staff and him to help San Benito County to get the hospital, to save our hospital. It's very, very urgent. We don't have anything else in San Benito County. So thank you.
Thank
The
you.
next public comment is from Maria Spandry.
Good evening, Vice Mayor Morales and City Council and amazing staff. Chief Reynoso, you rock. I'm just here to tell you, I just wanted to thank each of you because when I called for any assistance like this on Sunday night, I had something. And so I have to thank Mr. Dave over here. He was instrumental making sure to check on me to make sure we had everything and just checking on the little things that I needed. I do really want to encourage you because my biggest issue was communication, truly. The VFW, we stepped up. We made meals the first. We just, I was hoping not to step on anybody's toes, but we see people wet, no shoes, animals. Thank you so much for coming and taking care of the animals because it's, that's like their babies. We adopted a husky. He tortures me, but I love him. But your staff, amazing, just so loving. But I do encourage you to talk to, really, really communicate with them because the lack of communication and who's in charge and going back and forth, I was like, okay, well, we're just going to do this and I'll just beg for forgiveness later of what we needed to get done because the need for shoes, the need for socks, people coming in waist high, wet, everything was just a mess. Right now, we are accepting donations, and when I get them from the VFW, I will write letters, I promise, and thank yous, and they're giving me gift cards, and I turn around and I give them to the families. And they're like, oh my God, gas money. Oh my God, I can go get my own underwear. I mean, it's basic human needs. And to be able to have a shower, you should have seen their faces. A shower, I get to take a bath where I get to take all of this water that has been contaminated off my body. I mean, truly, it was amazing. We're working on laundry, and so, but the basic human needs are being met, but I just don't want you to forget them. Yes, right now, they're going to be here. I don't know how long they're going to be in our building, but don't forget them because they have no place to go. And so after this, Lover's Lane, I mean, it's going to happen again if we don't work on the levee. It's going to happen again and again and again. And so in the future, we need to have a plan of action, like immediately who's going to be doing this and who's going to be doing that. We have the opportunity as the VFW and being the building manager, we have the opportunity to have amazing resources. People are coming out of the woodworks like, what do you need? What do you need? What do you need? And so far I've been able to give socks, pillows, Target, love Target. They've just said, what do you need? And they've given me pillows. They've given me blankets. Couples are coming out, giving me $500 gift cards. And it's amazing how your community has really reached out. But my biggest point is please don't forget them because they have no place to go after this. So thank you.
The next public comment is from Linda Lamp.
Good evening. Now I get to see how hard you all work twice a month. Wow. Anyway, I'm here not so much to bring a complaint, but to bring awareness And I think we can all learn from this flood and this disaster, the holes that are in our community. And I see Rick shaking his head, and Mia Casey, mayor now, knows what we do. A lot of people don't know what Hollister Community Outreach is and what we do. Many people think we just serve the homeless community, which we do, and we have for the last 14 years, and we're committed to doing that. But I don't know if you know, but we also, during the pandemic, served over 1,100 families, which constituted to between 5,000 to 6,000 people a week for 2.5 years. And a lot of that was with the efforts of Bill Lee and Martha's Kitchen. Now we're serving between 500 and 600 families a week, and we are serving the truly underserved, the people, mostly the Wahican community that don't speak Spanish or English, and they even have their own dialects within dialects. But we've worked with resources like United Farm Workers in order to establish that rapport and that trust. So we're talking about the truly underserved. My concern is, how do you notify people during a crisis when you don't have that level of trust? I'm praying that we can come together as Hollister Community Outreach. I want us to be able to outreach to the entire community which we serve. And then we have a resale store. I guess we're a mini Goodwill, but we call it Worth Saving, the Restore, because we believe that people are worth saving. And then we help restore people. We've helped over 200 people get off the streets permanently into long-term drug and alcohol recovery. We've seen people graduate from college, people working at McDonald's. But sadly, I've also officiated at 27 funerals. And so work with your nonprofits, but let's develop a plan. Let's have ambassadors from each community to know how we're going to serve people. And I want to just really thank Rick, because Rick has been out there with us for, 9 years? He was with us that last flood, and he brought so many people into my father's house. And by the way, I don't know if you know, but we're no longer at 910 Monterey Street. The landlord never did anything. The pipes upstairs burst and came down on us, and there was a little Spanish church. And all of that raw sewage poured down on us, and I said, holy crap, we have got to go. Anyway, we don't have a building right now. We need one. Our homeless friends need it. And, Maria at the Vets Building, they did a great job. I need to finish this. You have to be prepared. There are homeless people out there who are mentally ill, who have drug issues. What do you do when you have a mentally ill woman come in and you have traumatized children and you're trying to serve the whole segment? But I'm here to tell you that everybody is worth saving. If it's a mentally ill woman or that little child, we need to work together. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Morales, those are all of the public comments.
Thank you all for sharing information. We will take it to heart. City Manager report?
Yeah, just a report that, yes, there is going to be a town hall meeting for the Hazel Hawkins Hospital on Monday, January 23rd at 5:30. And then, Victor, yeah, definitely.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Isn't Red Cross going to be having that building?
I'm on hold right now, trying to find out how long we're going to be there. So
Okay.
will keep you updated, but I'm not sure when. It's still in evacuation center.
Okay, thanks, Rick. We'll work with them to see if we can use this facility. Yeah, we'll offer this site also. Yeah, but thank you for letting me know. And then, like I said, I'll work with Victor on the gift certificates. David and I will work with him. And that's all I have to report on D1. And then for D2, nothing to report at this time.
Okay, next we're gonna do E1. And that's resolution number 2023-14, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Hollister adopting the City of Hollister 2022 Local Hazard Mitigation Plan from the Planning Department.
Good evening, Council. Amber Cameron, Senior Planner. As mentioned, tonight's item is consideration of a resolution of the City of Hollister adopting the City of Hollister's 2022 Local Hazard Mitigation Plan.
online, we do have our primary consultant for this project, Aaron Feinstein, from Atlas Planning Solutions. So I'll turn it over to Aaron.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can, Aaron.
Oh, great, thank you. Hi, my name is Aaron Fannin, still with Atlas Planning Solutions. We'll go ahead and get going with the presentation for tonight. And next slide. So tonight we're talking about the city's update to their local hazard mitigation plan. This was led by the Hollister Planning Department. And the purpose of the plan is really to open the door to mitigation grant dollars that are not available to all communities that don't have an active plan in place. And these plans have a 5-year expiration. And we wanted to make sure that the plan was updated to stay in line with that and ensure that over the next 5 years, the city has the opportunity to pursue FEMA grant funding that comes out on a regular basis. Next slide. So the local hazard mitigation plan is really one of several different plans that a city typically uses when they're addressing their hazards of concern. The city's been working through what the general plan update, and as part of that, there's an update to the chapter that deals with hazards known as the safety element. And every city and county typically has what they call an emergency operations plan. And these are really the 3 documents: the hazard mitigation plan, the safety element, and the EOP, that help a community understand the hazards that they are worried about and the steps that they need to take. But they act differently because they're different tools. And the safety element really focuses on the long-term effects of hazards and ways to address them. Whereas the EOP is really focused on being highly specific and focused on short-term short timelines for action. And so if you think of the rainstorms that we've had over the last couple of weeks, most cities are activating their emergency operations centers or pulling out their EOPs. They're really dealing with what's going on the ground. And the hazard mitigation plan, this is really a strategic plan that looks at over the next 5 years on specific actions that the city would undertake to try to mitigate or alleviate some future risk through use of these mitigation grant dollars. And so using all 3 of these and aligning them really helps in ensuring that you're effective in creating this future change. Next slide. And what is hazard mitigation? Well, it's really about taking sustained action to eliminate long-term future risk from hazards. It's intended to make your community less vulnerable to natural hazards before a disaster strikes. And the whole process that we went through is designed to develop an actual plan that gives the city departments specific actions that they can undertake in reducing that risk. Next slide. And what it does, you know, in its fundamental attributes, it really helps you discuss what are the hazards within your community, what are the risks associated with those hazards. So we look at analyzing those risks. What does the city currently have as far as policies and projects to reduce risk, and then what can be added to that, and then what direction to take in implementing and monitoring this plan over that 5-year time frame. Next slide. So to do this, we embark on a process where we gather staff members from various departments, as well as outside agencies. San Bernardino County emergency management staff were critical in participating in the process. and really have conversations about the issues that those departments are dealing with and the opportunities that you may be able to incorporate into this plan to leverage that potential grant funding. Next slide. And really, again, the main reason to prepare this plan, it's not only about reducing life and the loss of reducing injury and property damage, but it's really about making sure that the city is eligible for FEMA grant funding. And this is, again, mitigation funding. This is not connected to getting public assistance funds for recovery costs, which most cities are now dealing with and grappling with because of the recent storms. What these funding sources are is annually, the Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities grant funding and the Flood Mitigation Assistance grant funding is earmarked in the annual budget created by Congress. And that funding then is divided up amongst all of the states and territories. And so it's highly competitive. In addition, every time a disaster declaration is signed by the president, the jurisdictions within the boundary of that declaration are eligible for what are called hazard mitigation grant program dollars. And these recent storms that California has been suffering from are now under a disaster declaration that was signed by President Biden just a few weeks ago. And so as a result, once all of the damage assessments have been tallied, there will be a line item in there for mitigation grant funding that any jurisdiction that has an approved hazard mitigation plan would be eligible to pursue and start tackling some of the issues that they've identified in their hazard mitigation planning process. Next slide. So the hazards that we looked at for Hollister included seismic hazards, drought, severe weather, human cause hazards, hazmat release, disease and pests, wildfire, flooding, aircraft, and geologic hazards. One thing to caution though is that when you look at that list of hazards, only those that are considered natural hazards are eligible for the FEMA grant funding. So anything associated with human caused hazards or hazardous materials release or aircraft incidents, those are the types of hazards that were important to the community because of unique conditions within Hollister, but they would not be eligible to pursue these FEMA grant dollars. However, other grants may the city may be eligible under different grant programs, and connecting it to the hazard mitigation plan may be one way to tell the story to the granting agency as to why it's important. Next slide. The process that was used to develop the plan, we started in March 2021 and worked internally with city staff and departments and the county. We then went through a process to do public review and stakeholder coordination. This was between April of 2021 and February of 2022. We did have a conversation with the General Plan Advisory Committee and provided them with some insight. And then the plan in February was then transmitted to San Benito County. This plan is part of the overall San Benito County multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan. And so this, we treated this plan as what they call an annex, but it is still the city's standalone plan and what you'll be using to guide decision-making. In April of 2022 through October, it was reviewed by both Cal OES and FEMA. And in October, it was approved by FEMA, giving the city the option to now do their adoption, which is where we are today. Next slide. During this process, the city leveraged a lot of the work that's been done with the general plan and used a lot of the outreach resources that they had gathered with the general plan team. We did an online survey that had 42 participants. We did some online promotion through different social media. We again had that public meeting with the General Plan Advisory Committee. And the draft plan, again, was released in February, and there were no comments received that resulted in changes to the plan. Next slide. One of the things that we, as a standard practice, add to all of our plans And we found this to be an issue for a lot of communities is now that you have a plan, what do you do with it? And we've added in this implementation handbook. And our goal with this is that instead of carrying around a 150-page document with you all the time, this would be, you know, around a 20 to 30-page document that you could carry with you that gives you the basic nuts and bolts of what you need to do from an implementation standpoint. So our intent here is to really make it easy for all city departments, city staff members to have something that is quickly at their fingertips when we're talking about projects, budgeting, and the like. Next slide. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have and clarify anything I may have overlooked.
Oops, sorry. Thank you for the presentation. Do we have questions from council?
No, I don't have any. I think it's appropriate timing. So I don't know how you were able to figure that out. What's the weather, people in charge of the weather and people in charge of our agenda, but I am totally for preparedness. I don't know if I always get these words like community. It's like all of us come in unity to do things. Prepare. I'm gonna save this for later, but thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. My only question, where does this document live? The implementation handbook?
The implementation handbook is actually an appendix in the hazard mitigation plan. So right at the back, it's the last of the appendices. But the intent of on how it was designed was for somebody to easily pull it out and be able to carry that with them without having to carry around the entire plan.
Let me rephrase the question. Is it on our website where it's accessible to the public, or if anyone's interested in understanding or reading, where would they be able to find it?
So currently, the city of Hollister does not have its own plan. It would be on the county's website that's available. Personally, I find it a little bit difficult to find, but if we were to adopt our own plan, we can work with Paul and David and make sure that it's accessible, not only having the multi-jurisdictional aspect, so the whole San Benito County plan, but also having a more direct link for citizens if they would like to view Hollister's.
Is there a way that maybe we can say useful links and then be able to provide a link out, even if it's outside and the county's plan? That way people are able to access the information. Thank you.
Perfect.
Okay. I will now open the public hearing on this item. City Clerk, do we have any public comments?
Vice Mayor Morales, we do not have any public comments for this item.
Okay. I will now close the public hearing for this item. Any discussion?
I am I'd like to hear more. I'd like for the city to come up with its own plan that will tie into the county's plan, that will tie into the state, which will tie into FEMA. Like I said, you know, a lot of this I'm going to be talking about a little bit later on my G4, G2. You know, you can never be over-prepared. You know, I'd rather be over-prepared than under-prepared. And when it's your family, whether it's an animal that's your family or a person, you know what? No one wants to see their loved ones hurting. And if we're not being prepared, we're going to see a lot of that. And that's Hollister's, that's not Hollister. So I'd like to see Hollister come up with its own plan. I think we got the people and in place and stuff to coordinate to tie into all these other sources. And I'm extremely happy that we're doing this. I don't know if there's ever a small disaster, but because when it's affecting you, there's nothing worse in the world going on. But I think this is a good opportunity for us to tighten up and get better prepared. Thank you.
David?
Yeah, I'd just like to add, one of the items that staff is working on and will be bringing forward to your next council meeting. We've been working on it since before the holiday break, is requesting an RFP, giving us permission to issue an RFP for disaster debris removal and coordination services. That's an actual niche industry where there are firms that will come in and coordinate all of that. If we were to, let's say, have an earthquake or another flood, where they can come in and coordinate those efforts, bring in all of their equipment and help coordinate that. What is interesting about the business model is it's typically a no-cost MOU with the municipality, and they are activated when there's an emergency declared. And so once that state or federal emergency is declared, then that gives us the authority to bring them in. And then typically they're working under FEMA claims. So, and then the reimbursement comes to those firms once a FEMA claim has been submitted and paid. And so we've been exploring that. It's just about done. But I wanted to add that just to this discussion to know that on top of this is something that your staff has been working on, and we'll plan to bring it to the next council meeting for further discussion.
Thank you. Okay, any other comments or discussion on this item? If not, can I get a motion?
So I'll make a motion to hold a public hearing, read by title only, waive full reading, and introduce an ordinance of the City of Hollister amending Title 17 zoning ordinance of the Hollister Municipal Code, and schedule a second reading and adoption of the ordinance for the February 6, 2023 City Council meeting.
Councilmember Burns, that was the resolution for the next item.
Oh, well, I'm ahead. Oh, well, let me, okay, so this one's easy. Yeah, move to approve.
Was that a second? Okay, first and second. All those in favor say aye.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. I just wanted to quickly bring up, Eva approached me and wanted to let you guys know that what you adopted tonight is the City of Hollister's plan. That's ours. So it's already one step in implementing what we as a city want to see. The handbook that Aaron was talking about, those are kind of like breaking it down into steps and who's responsible for what and what individual divisions or departments are going to be responsible for, and what we want to see implemented over the next few years, and making sure that our city is safe.
Thank you for that. And you know, if there's anything, I'd love to be part of any of that. It's near and dear to my heart. Thank you.
And we'll get it on our website.
Great. I was going to ask that. Can we do a campaign around that?
Can we do it? Yep.
Reports from city council members regarding committees in which they serve.
No, we still have E2,
Oh,
which
I'm
is the
sorry.
ordinance.
I'm
for-
sorry, I apparently threw you off as well.
Sorry about that. My apologies. We're all awake. We're a little. Welcome.
Hello, good evening. The item before you tonight is some amendments to the zoning ordinance related to site and architecture review, plan development, and some new design standards that staff is recommending. This is part of the zoning ordinance overhaul that we previously discussed during a joint study session with the Planning Commission. Phase 1 is all the amendments that we need to make to the zoning ordinance to comply with new state laws that have been passed since it was first updated. That's underway. You recently adopted the Senate Bill 9 2-unit housing development ordinance. Staff is going to the Planning Commission at the next Planning Commission meeting to discuss accessory dwelling units as well as density bonuses. And that should hopefully, unless the state passes more laws, that should complete phase 1. This is part of phase 2, and what we discussed during that joint study session was staff has there is a number of issues with the site and architectural chapter in particular, and that's what staff uses a lot. That's the permit that most people are applying for when they're applying for something through us. And so we had identified that this was a priority for us over the rest of the zoning ordinance because we're having so many issues. There's a lot of things that are unclear, various other problems with it. When we started phase 2, we noticed that we couldn't just do site and architecture review. We have to do the whole section that it lives in because everything built off one another, and there are also some inconsistencies throughout. And so that becomes a very big portion of work for us. And what we needed to do was split it into 2 pieces, kind of get some things going for us now that can help us out and help kind of guide development, and then we'll come back with study sessions with the Planning Commission discussing these changes, and then obviously we'd have public hearings on them, and that will take a little bit of time. Then phase 3 is the rest of the zoning ordinance. So this is obviously a much bigger plan where this is taking us quite a while to complete. For a little bit of background on this phase 2A that we're calling it, this was reviewed by the Planning Commission on November 17th, 2022 during a public hearing. During that public hearing, the Planning Commission requested that staff come up with a phasing plan for how to implement one of the changes that we're proposing. And so we did that. They were satisfied, and on December 15th, they adopted a resolution recommending that you approve the zoning ordinance amendments that we're going to discuss tonight. So one of the big changes that we're recommending is that we modify the site and architectural section of the zoning ordinance to now require site and architectural review for all single-family developments of 3 or more dwellings. So SB 9 units, obviously, those are the 2 units, they'd be reviewed separately. Once you hit over 3, it would require site and architectural review. The way that this section is currently worded now, it excludes properties in the R1 zoning district from site and architectural review, but a interpretation was made long ago that as long as it was single family, we weren't going to review it. So even if you're in west of Fairview with a specific plan, we haven't required site and architectural review. We'd like to consistently make it so that all single family residential developments over 3 require site and architectural review. What this means currently is that if I am a developer and I have 500 single family dwelling units, Planning Commission looks at the tentative map. Nobody ever looks at design. So we are looking at setbacks potentially with that tentative map, depending. I'll go into a little bit more of that later, but we never look at design. The first time we see design is at building permit stage. So the developer comes in, applies for their master development plan. They're required to give us 4 different styles for their single family development, and that's all we can review. It's ministerial, we can't review anything else. What we've noticed recently is that there are some developments that are coming in where they're calling them 4 different architectural styles, but they really aren't that different. The code doesn't give us any sort of restrictions, and again, it's ministerial, so we can't really work with them on it. There are some other areas in which maybe they don't meet portions of the zoning ordinance and staff is spending a lot of time, but again, they don't have a permit with us, so we're limited in what we can do, and all the time that we're spending is under their building permit, not under a planning review, where we can work with them a little bit more and where we would hopefully have some findings that we'd have to make and other things in the zoning ordinance to help us out when reviewing their design. What we are recommending as part of this is you can combine your site and architecture review with your tentative map if you wanted to. But if you already had a tentative map, you could then submit to planning when you're ready with your design. For review by the director when you're ready. So tentative maps live for a very long time. And then once they're finalized, it could be many years down the road before a developer is actually ready to build. So they'd have time to think about their design if they wanted to, time to, you know, things change obviously as you go further down the road towards development. You know, maybe you wanted to change what you wanted to do. It gives you more time to think about it. Or if you are ready to go, you can combine everything all at once and then just go to Planning Commission. So that's just what I basically just went over. So what I like to do is I like to look around at other cities and make sure that what we're asking is not unusual and is not a burden on people. The table that you can see above, it's kind of goes over some of the jurisdictions in the area, and you can see that for the most part, except for one city, site review by either the director or the planning commission is required to look at the design of a single family residential development. So the one exception was Salinas. They require a site plan review through planning, but they don't do design review. That's the one exception. Some cities also require review of additions to single family. We're not recommending that. It's just brand new single family. One of the other things that staff is recommending to be included right now within the site and architecture review is the list of findings, and this is a long list, so I won't read them all and waste your time, but what findings do is they give us the record for why we've approved a project. So oftentimes staff will go back 20, 30, 40 years later, and we read the resolution with the findings if we have a question on why we approved something, and the why is supposed to be in there. So I can easily tell if someone says, oh, but you approved this 20 years ago. I can go back and look at it and say, well, we approved it for this reason. That's why we approved it. Or if we're reviewing something and, you know, we notice a project that was maybe built a few years ago, and we're like, well, why did we approve that one? The findings will give me a clue as to what we were doing, and I can then use it for this next development. It also just establishes really the legal reason for why we're approving the project that we're approving. These findings will go for all permits approved under site and architectural review. And so that would be a new building, let's say industrial building, commercial building, multifamily, everything that gets wrapped under that site and architectural review. We don't have findings right now in the code, so staff developed some basic ones that we've been using, but we'd like a list in the code that's comprehensive and that applicants can see ahead of time so they know what we're looking for. Someone who wants to design a project can look at it, they know what we're looking for. Really just makes it more clear for everyone, both for us, the Planning Commission, and then the architect, developer, whoever they are. They can go find it on their own. It'll be in the code, super easy to find. So with this change, we are recommending that the requirement be phased in. We know we have people in for building permit review right now. We'd like to let them continue to go forward in that process and not require the site and architectural review now. For anyone in this kind of interim phase before this becomes effective, we'd like them to be able to, if they're ready, they apply for their building permit, either their plot plan or their master development plan, and we'll let them go on in the process that they've already started. We're not going to tell them to stop. Now you have to get a different permit. So we'd like to phase it in to make it more, not so cumbersome on some people that are already further along in the process. And this was also a recommendation of the Planning Commission. They wanted it phased in to not make it a burden for anyone. So the big change would be in this section, which is talking about project review. As you can see in the top upper highlighted area, that we're removing where it used to say R1. Now we're just saying site and architectural review is required for new single family residential developments. And then in the bottom, it's in the code, it's clear, we're talking about that phasing that says you applied for your building permit, you're fine. As long as you do it before this becomes effective, you get to move through that process. Anyone after that would then have to follow the new process. And it really helps kind of ease everyone into this new system that we're proposing. So as part of this, one of the other recommendations that we are making is to require site and architecture review with a planned unit development request. A planned unit development request is when a developer would like some sort of relief from the code. So let's say they're in R1, they feel that the standard side yard setback is not something that they'd like a reduced setback. Maybe they want to add some interesting porches to their development, so they want a reduced front yard setback. They're asking for some relief from the code. The way that it works now is that someone requests the plan development and tells us what they want, what their exception to the code is that they want, and then they apply for their tentative map. That gets reviewed by the Planning Commission, and it's done. But we don't know what the house looks like. So they're asking us for these reduced setbacks or some other sort of incentive from the city, but we have no idea what it looks like. A reduced front yard setback might sound very good, but what does it really look like? Is it a big flat wall? Is it a blank wall getting close? We don't know. It's not required right now. So really a planned unit development is something that the city allows relief from the code to encourage better design. So I come in and I have this interesting development and I want to cluster homes around a garden area and have like a little walkway and maybe a fun area where people can hang out. But for me to make that work, to pencil, I need you to waive my front yard setback and my rear yard setback. Then the Planning Commission can look at the plan. We have a new finding, and they say that actually looks really interesting. We'll waive our setbacks and allow you to build this new interesting development. So that would be one way where a planned development would work. Again, maybe they want some interesting porches to activate the street, so they want a very reduced front yard setback. That can also be a very interesting development, something new for the city, provide a different sort of housing type. The Planning Commission might look at that design and say, yes, that looks good, we'd like to approve it. So that would just help us be able to see, to visualize these requests that they're making. As minorly in this proposed amendment, the city attorney noticed some other minor changes that we should make just for clarity. And so those changes are incorporated in your attachment where you see some kind of lines edited out. So it's really for clarity, and it was at the request of the city attorney. The last one is a big one. Right now, the zoning ordinance, as we kind of briefly touched on when I was discussing site and architecture review, the zoning ordinance does not have any design guidelines, standards, et cetera, for, well, any development really. The state has passed two bills, Senate Bill 35 and Senate Bill 330, which now allows a city to only adopt objective design standards. In the past, there are some cities that had adopted subjective design standards. The state says we can't do that anymore. They have to be objective, which means I read a rule and the rule tells me I can do something and it's easy to follow. I don't get to use my judgment at all on whether or not you followed it. If I say you have to use 10 materials on your building, that is objective because you can use 10 materials on your building and I can't say, oh, wait, now I want 12. What we are noticing is a number of projects that are coming in that are not designed well. And because of SB 35 and SB 330, I can suggest that they change their design, but I can't enforce it, neither can the city, because there are no design standards that we've adopted. So for example, after I had written this ordinance, I opened up a set of plans for a multifamily development, and it is a white box. Literally a white box. That is what it looks like. There's no articulation, the roof is flat, there is not much going on with this building. But our code doesn't tell them that that's not okay. So what we are proposing is a new chapter, chapter 17.30, and it will provide objective design standards for single family and multifamily. And this does two things. One, it helps us with the design of the buildings that we are seeing, in some cases, not in all, in some cases for buildings in the city. When a building is built, it will last for a very long time. It doesn't matter if it's the most attractively designed building or not, it will be there for a very long time. And as you move through a city, you can tell, you have your older district, those houses, for the most part, look the same that they looked like 100 years ago. So you can see that the life of most of these buildings will be quite a while. And we don't have anything to help us out. By having these design standards, they're in the code, anyone can clearly read them. It's there before you design your project. You are aware of it. It is mentioned in the code. It's easy to access. If I am a developer, I can read it. If I am an architect, I can read it. You know ahead of time what we're looking for, and it's really just to help staff out as well as the Planning Commission with some of these designs that we are seeing. As part of phase 2, we had discussed design guidelines for citywide. And these design guidelines will be for things like multifamily, mixed use, various areas in the city. And this is one of the areas in which we identified that we did want design guidelines. In this case, we have done most of the work, so these guidelines are temporarily in the zoning ordinance until we can do that comprehensive design guidelines. They will then move into those comprehensive design guidelines where we get to add pictures and diagrams and other things to make it even more clear. But what we're asking for in this sort of interim time, because we have quite a number of project staff is working on right now. We're trying to get the general plan done. Those are our priorities at this point. And so we need something kind of interim to help us out, help the city out, and really also ease people into the fact that we will be having design guidelines. This is kind of like a baby step towards moving where we're trying to move, where we have a comprehensive design guidelines document that will guide development in most of the city in the future. So in conclusion, staff is recommending these proposed modifications to promote better development in the city, design of single-family and multifamily residential developments. We'd like to be able to require a site and architectural review for single-family residential developments, which is a change, to ensure that those projects comply with the zoning ordinance, with the design guidelines. Do they comply with the design guidelines? We'd like to review their landscaping, place conditions of approval on the project if we needed to, none of which can be done at this point with the way that the process is set up. We'd like to require a planned unit development request be with a site and architectural review so we can see what they're asking us for. What does it look like? A flat drawing on a piece of paper showing me some setbacks does not really show us what it looks like without seeing that design of the building. You know, those are two different things. We would like to, again, include the objective design standards to help guide development in this interim area that we're in, where we're trying to get to the design guidelines, but we have other priorities as a city, such as, you know, development applications, the general plan, other things that take our time right now, so we can't fully move forward with that. And those things will take a while anyways to do. And so these changes are very minor, so we could do them quickly. The other ones will take us quite a bit of time. The next steps in this process, because obviously the zoning ordinance overhaul is a long process. As I mentioned, we're going to go to public hearing for accessory dwelling units and density bonuses. This, after we had them drafted, the state passed more laws, so we had to go back and fix them. So that one took a little bit longer and obviously more time. We're hoping to be done with this by March of 2023. Phase 2B, which is the complete overhaul of the 17.24 chapter of the zoning ordinance, is partially underway, but obviously once we finish tonight, we have some other things we need to finish up. We'll begin working on that we'll be spending more time on that. And then phase 3, which is the rest of the zoning ordinance, is the entire rest of the zoning ordinance. will begin. We're going to start partial work on that because it's so much work, but most of the work will not begin until this phase 2B, which is the 17.24, as well as design guidelines, is completed. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from council?
Vice Mayor Morales. So, you mentioned a comment that tentative maps live for a long time in your presentation, and I was under the impression that about 2 years ago, we had some sort of a change where a tentative map was only valid or had a life of, it was either 3 or 5 years. And so I just want to be clear on that, because that's a huge red flag to me to begin with. And so,
Yeah, I mean, you are correct, but the problem is that a lot of times they can find exemptions, like when we had the sewer moratorium or recession, there's a lot of times they can get extensions, so that's where the concern is.
okay.
And once they file their final map, the layout is locked into place.
Okay.
So you can have a final map for eternity.
Okay. And I will say, this is a lot to deal with on a council regular agenda item, that I think it would be better to bring this back candidly to a special meeting to have a sole conversation. And candidly, it didn't help that the council received a 1,962-page council agenda on Friday at noon, and to try and go through all this is technical, and so I'm not opposed to the conversation, but I think there's a lot more questions to ask than I've had time to be thoroughly prepared to make a decision on. Did we reach out to the Building Industry Association, or did we reach out to the development community, and what are their thoughts, and what extent of outreach did we have other than simply noticing this?
We've had 2 public hearings with the Planning Commission that were noticed. I've given the draft design guidelines to people that I'm working with to let them know so they are aware. I've never had any feedback from any of them that they have any comments or questions. So that was what we've been doing in the interim. We are obviously trying to get this done because we're trying to catch a few that don't look very good. And in the absence of design guidelines, this state tells us there's not much we can do.
Okay. I think I'd like to reserve opportunity for follow-up after. Thank you.
I agree with Mr. Councilmember Burns. I think there's, in other cities, like in Palo Alto, when they had, and I love the white box, as they had a very similar design in those areas, and those are now, I don't know when they were built, but now they're something of a, that's what people want. So I think with time, things change. When Senate bills are passed, it's more of reactionary policy, and there was a lot of thought put into that. So I would like a little bit more time to process as well, and I would like it to come back for a special meeting as well.
Well, we'll work on, should we withdraw it, or?
Well, there's also a public.
Yeah, we should do public hearing first.
Mhm.
Are you guys under any type of timelines or anything? I mean, general map, all these different things. I just wondering, is there any other time constraints that you guys are worried about?
No, I mean, it's the longer that these things take, the more we can't do. So obviously for us, we'd like things to help us out as quickly as possible. So that's our own internal timeline. But then this delays like other things that we can do, obviously, with the rest of the zoning ordinance overhaul, because this is stopping what we're doing for the most part.
I will now open the public hearing on this item. City Clerk, do we have any public comments?
Vice Mayor Morales, we have one public comment from Victor Gomez.
Okay.
Honorable Vice Mayor, members of the council, Victor Gomez with Pinnacle Strategy, local land use consultant. A couple of things. First, just want to thank staff for their work on this. Certainly not an easy lift. But I will say that the only reason I found out about this is because I watch every planning commission. Even if I don't have an agenda item on the planning commission, I review every planning commission agenda. I cannot attend the planning commission where this item came up, and so I wasn't able to lobby the commission and ask for some changes. So the state is passing laws for a reason, because we can't build housing fast enough, right? And I know some may not feel that way, but as somebody that works in cities like San Jose, Watsonville, Santa Cruz, Hollister is actually a pleasure to work in. It's nice to work with staff, the planning commission, and council. But the reason the state is passing these laws is because the development process, the entitlement process, is absolutely burdensome. I was able to get 2 vesting tentative maps approved at the planning commission over the last 4 or 5 months. I started those actually I didn't start those. I voted for them when I was a council member in 2014, and we got them approved in October of 22. 8 years it took to approve a vesting tentative map for 92 lots, right? So I understand that there's a desire to review. We don't want to see these cookie cutter type developments out there. No problem with that. I have no problem with that. But there needs to be extensive review of these changes moving forward. I'm a member of Bay Area BIA. I think I may be the only member of Bay Area BIA as an individual here in San Benito County. If it wasn't for me reviewing agendas, I wouldn't know this was happening. BIA hasn't even reached out to me. I was texting them right now, and they're like, what? What are you talking about? Right? That's a problem. Tentative map, a couple of asks that I have, if you continue this item and bring it back to a public hearing, there are vesting tentative maps that are already out there. I ask that you not apply this to vesting tentative maps, okay? So if there is a vesting tentative map approved, allow them to go through the process and not have to submit to these changes. And I would also suggest that we make those changes at the planning commission level, because sometimes there are indifferences between the applicants and staff, and we'd like discretionary review by the planning commission for those proposed changes. The addition of 17.30 is another barrier of approval. Again, we're putting more obstacles in front of entitlement and development as we move forward. But what we need to do is meet as a development community first. We need to have a public hearing. We need to have this individually discussed. Where are the architects? Where are the engineers? Were they notified? Yeah. I'm stayed here because this is important to me. This is important in the work that I do here in Hollister. That's the only reason I'm here. But I didn't have an opportunity to go and blast it out to the world, right? We need more engagement, Vice Mayor. So anyway, I look forward to working with you and staff as we move this forward.
Vice Mayor Morales, there are no other public comments for this item.
Yeah, and then to add, Vice Mayor, if you can remember that the staff was asking to have joint sessions with the Planning Commission and the council to discuss these items, but with everybody's different schedules, trying to herd the council and the commission at the same time we just couldn't follow any dates. But that would be staff's recommendation, is to still have those joint meetings. But if you want to just have a special meeting with the council, we can definitely move that forward also.
Thank you, Brett. There's 3 of us here, so
Yeah.
maybe I'm not sure if you can communicate, but
So I would like to see more representation from everybody, from the council, from developers, from engineers, and everything. This is a huge topic, and it's a lot of spaghetti that I don't understand. But I do have trusted professionals here that I trust. So we need to have a special meeting.
So what I would
And I don't
ask-
like special meetings.
Yeah, that we withdraw this item, and then we'll reach out to everybody, and we'll try to get have it re-agendized in a future meeting, which sounds like either we'll have to do it on a Saturday or a particular day during the week.
I think that's fine, and I'm fine with the joint meeting with the planning commission as well.
Okay.
Mr. Burns?
So, Mr. Miller, how do you propose to reach out to the development community? Because again, I think, I've heard testimony this evening that there may have been an effort. I believe there was clearly an effort, but I don't know that the right target was achieved.
Yeah, we can reach out to the BIA. We'll talk to the local engineers, and we'll get them out to those different people that submit plans to us.
Okay, and I, as the Vice Mayor suggested, I would like to have the Planning Commission attend that. Also, not, I mean, I want to support the Planning Commission, mine specifically, but overall, and I want to support the Planning and Development Department, but these are big things,
Yeah,
and
it's
I think we
understandable.
just need more public engagement. So, all right.
Not a problem with
Thank you.
that.
I will now close the public hearing for this item. Proceeding, since we are pulling the item, is that correct?
You are correct.
Okay,
So now we're at G1.
all right, I just want to make sure. Thank you, Jennifer, you know my cues. Okay, reports from the city council members regarding committees in which they serve. Councilmember Burns.
I have nothing to report, thank you.
Councilmember Perez. I have nothing to report other than COG will be meeting this Thursday at 4 o'clock. Informational reports from city council, city manager, city attorney, city clerk, and staff. City manager?
Usually we go with the council first. That way, if there's any items that you want to be put on the agenda.
Okay. Councilmember Burns.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. So I do have a list of about 16 items, since this is our only meeting in this month. However, because there are not two of the council members currently present, I'm going to only bring up a couple issues, and then I'll defer to February for the others. So one of them actually came up tonight, and I would like to get a reconsideration of the fees in relation to the gentleman that spoke regarding the property, the development, and how fees are established. I don't remember his name, but he's got the
Marty Miller.
Twin Oaks.
Yeah.
So I'd like to see that happen. And then the other question I have, since we have planning staff here, currently, as I understand it, in order to do a general plan amendment, it takes a 4/5 vote of the council, and to make that happen, or a supermajority. And I have worked in other jurisdictions where it's a simple majority, and so I would like to have a process brought back to where that could be considered at a meeting in the near future, to reduce the 4/5 to a 3/5. So I don't know if that's possible, but
Well, we've got to watch that
I'm not asking for it now. I'm
Right,
simply
I just wanna-
asking that it be brought
I was
back.
just gonna say that that's part of the phase 2 is all of our permitting processes chapters.
I got you, but this to me is something
Probably a little
that,
quicker.
yeah, this to me is something I want to move forward with, and I'm growing old by the minute, and I don't have,
Yeah.
so, thank you. If we could bring that back if
Sure, not a
council
problem.
concurs, thank you.
Hi. I just want to keep this simple. I just want to thank everybody for what they're doing for this flood that we're going through. The stages and what I was seeing was pretty much the housing part of this whole situation, and I'm super glad to hear about it. We're already starting our first phase of a city plan, basically. We're on that road. The you know what? There's so many things that this flood brings up. All the wrong, the levee, this, that, the broken things, the things that might have caused it. But I like to focus on the positive things. And, you know, how can we make these other things better? Yes, also, obviously. But you know what? I seen the comfort. I seen a kid's face, and I see the comfort come from the wet, soggy shoes and socks to a smile where there's actually a little bit of hope. Because, you know, I put myself in seeing this situation. These people are coming in with on CAL FIRE vans and their animals, you know. I love my animals. And to see PD, you know, it's like, in the beginning, it wasn't very organized, to tell you the truth. We had a place and we had needs. And thank God that our police department, our animal control, they responded first and foremost because we needed a place to put the animals, because the people needed themselves to decompress and take care of their little ones. So we needed to take care of the animals first. And so when animal control showed up with all these cages, within 6 minutes, I was proud to be part of the city council. It's like, yeah, that's us. That's Hollister. That's how we do it. We see a need. We fill it right away. We don't wait till next week. You know. So anything that can happen with this emergency preparedness, anything we do in advance is a benefit. It helps that little boy get rid of that wet sock and shoes and get into something dry that much quicker if we have prepare. Basically, I hear prepare, and it's like we're pairing up, because when it happens, we're going. That's prepare. And I saw a lot of that wasn't happening, and I know that the Board of Supervisors have done their stuff over there, but it's like, you know what, Dave, thank you so much. You were Johnny on the spot for whatever it was. Size 3 diapers, size 7 diapers, cages, signs, whatever it was, you were there, and I appreciate that. Forget about me. The people appreciate you. Your neighbors appreciate you for doing that, and that's awesome. I had some. I spent a lot of time there this weekend. I had surgery Friday, you know, during the storm. The community standing up, you know, Maria, Red Cross, David, VFW, and you guys are some good cooks. I had the best ham hocks and beans 2 nights ago. There's so many other people that were there. It felt good. After things were able to be put in place, and these people were actually able to have a pillow on their cot at the end of the night, and they were dry, and they had hope. And you know what? A lot of it was because of all these people that were involved. But I really see, Dave, I don't know if you realize how much everyone was watching you and how much you impacted everything. So I want to thank you for that. And I'd really love to see us have our own plan that ties into all these other agencies for the benefit of our people and our animals. You know? Actually, at the end of that night, I kept 2 Rottweilers in my garage, you know, because people were just standing up to help out. So, and I'm not trying to get a pat on my back. I'm just trying to give an example of what we can do personally during these floods and situations. So thank everybody for what they did. My heart goes out to you guys out there on Lover's Lane, and if there's ever anything I can do to help you, let me know. Thank you.
So I'll do mine, and then I'll read comments from our mayor, Mia Casey. So first, I'd like to thank our staff, our airport staff, Public Works, our police department, animal control, our services, our fire. Also want to thank Maria, and I just want to share that many of the departments and residents also wanted to thank David for all his work, and of course, thank you, Brett, for not only being present, but also allowing our staff the freedom and flexibility to do their job and help our community. So thank you very much. A lot of gratitude from a lot of our partners in our community. So as a reminder, I would like a procurement policy back that talks about skilled and trained workforce instead of just looking at the lowest bid. Want to be able to prevent a lot of the issues that we've had in the past. Also, as I mentioned before, looking at local hires and preferably any additional points that are given if the companies have veterans or working with veterans. I would also like to have these two items back, the master contract for Verizon, just for knowledge and awareness, and then the contract for 4-leave. I also like to have Twin Oaks, that to be brought back. And I'm in agreement with Councilmember Burns in terms of the process to see how we can move things forward. And then as a recommendation, I think as we're looking to work with council members on our time for like our goals and priority lists for the budget process, using tools, and I don't know, Paul, if you can help with this, there's a lot of different tools that we can use just to be able to identify time so that we're more efficient and we're able to communicate what that looks like better. I'm now going to read from the comments from Mayor Mia Casey. Just wanted to extend my thanks to everyone who helped with the emergency operations around the storms and flooding. Not only were all of the county emergency personnel, Red Cross, BFW staff, and Sheriff's Office wonderful, but I wanted to recognize our city staff who assisted, especially our fire and police department. Brett and David, who checked in regularly and gave support and shared information when needed. I also wanted to thank Rick Perez, who checked in regularly at the shelters to see there was anything they needed. Mayor Mia attended a strategic planning meeting workshop at the high school last week. The topic was student engagement, and there was a great mix of instructors, staff, students, and board members. I enjoyed talking with the students and learning more about the ways the high school is trying to engage students in learning. Mia Casey had a meeting with our newly hired executive director from the Council of Governments, Vinu Abraham. She comes to us from Sacramento and is a wealth of knowledge. I'm looking forward to working with her. There's a community forum set up for Monday evening, January the 23rd, for the hospital staff and board, who will be giving a presentation on the latest developments in the hospital fiscal crisis and also doing a question and answer session. Mia Casey will be part of that meeting, assisting as a moderator with the question and answer. Mia Casey would like to ask that we, the council, consider developing a policy and procedure around how all items are submitted for the agenda. City Manager Miller?
Yes, so on the request from our city attorneys, that they've asked that I get a verbal consensus from council about putting items on the agenda. So Councilmember Burns, you've already brought up the fees on the sewer and 4/5 to 3/5 vote on the pre-annexation. Vice Mayor, you also stated that you would like to see those two items. And Councilman Perez, would you like to? Okay. For procurement policy, I can ask the council, but one of the requests to Casey, our new administrative services director, had requested that he update our policies. So that will be one of the policies to be updated. But if you wanted consensus on that, we can do that too. It's up to council that if you want that brought forward. But I've already gave him the direction, so it's up to if you wanted it more official or not. So.
Is there a sense for timing?
I mean, I gave it to him when he first started. That's a request, but we can work on it being within 30 days. Okay. 30 days. Okay, Council. Oh yeah, sorry. Casey, come on up. So Casey is the new administrative services director. You approved his contract, I believe, at the last council meeting. So, but yes.
That's
so
me.
he takes over for administrative services director, or services that I used to do a long time ago. But I've asked him to update a lot of our policies because they're due to be dusted off, and so one of them would be the procurement policy.
Thank you for the introduction. Welcome.
Yeah.
And did I hear you say 30 days would be within reason?
Yes, absolutely. Come back with a working draft within a couple meetings.
The first meeting in March, if that was the right.
Does that work? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. The other one was Vice Mayor Morales asked for bring back the master contract for Verizon and then the 4-leaf contract. I can bring that back. We had the 4-leaf contract brought back I think it was about a year ago, so we can bring that forward. Okay. Sorry, I got one from Councilmember Burns, and thanks. And then I'm glad the mayor had requested, so one of my items that I was going to ask council to get a consensus on is to bring back a policy on how items are put on the agenda. We don't have a written policy. We just have past practices. We recommend that we have an actual policy of how we put things on the agenda. Do we have support for that item?
Yes. I'm wondering if a policy is strong enough, and maybe it's not something we just go in and add to the municipal code, because one of the questions I have, and I couldn't get an answer from our last city attorney because he said there wasn't one, but I asked early in my tenure, was can I get a legal written opinion of what a consensus is? And we were told there is no such thing. And so, is a consensus a simple majority? Or is it, and so for me, I would like something stronger than a policy. I'd like something that's codified in our municipal code, so as councils turn over, these questions have been asked and answered, and they might choose to go in and amend it through a text amendment, but as people come and go, my sense is the interpretations can change, but I think the change needs to be more formal than a policy.
Correct. The policies that we were looking at actually stated a simple majority. We didn't use the word consensus. So No, I'm saying in the policies that we were we've already kind of looked down at what other cities are doing, and we would want to put in, not use the word consensus. We would actually use words that define what it would be.
So tonight, a classic example would be the three of us form a majority, but the reality is 2 council members aren't here, so how do we know if it goes 2-1? I mean, there's just so much, I think, that could be better done through a more specific process, I would say.
Councilmember Burns, is your mic on?
It is now.
Could you repeat everything you just?
I will tell you, it sounded like it was on to me because he was right next to me.
Thanks, Paul, for once again pointing out some of my flaws. I appreciate that. Your budget's coming.
I mean, if you'd like, I can explain how we interpret consensus. But I would step back and say that typically when we're talking about consensus, we're not necessarily talking about a formal vote. So there are items, when you're adopting a resolution, a general plan amendment, or certain items that require a formal vote that have statutory majority votes. So for instance, a resolution requires 3 affirmative votes. The city's municipal code, when there's a general plan amendment initiation, it requires 4 affirmative votes. When we're talking about consensus, it's usually those more informal situations like your council comments. And in those cases, we interpret consensus to be the majority of the council members present. And so tonight it would be 2 out of 3. If there was 5 here, it would be 3 out of 5. But in those cases, you're not making a decision. You're just asking or giving direction to staff. But so when you do decide what policy to adopt for adding items to the agenda, it can be in the city's municipal code. That's not a problem. And you can decide what you want that to say and how you want it to read.
I appreciate that. I think a rework would be in order. I mean, I've been doing a lot of time in the Hollister Municipal Code. And for example, in one section, it says that if a vote's taken and the council member doesn't respond, it's presumed that that's an affirmative. And, I hold myself accountable for doing my homework, but on the other hand, I'm not convinced that happens all the time. And frankly, some of these things are just, they're odd. I don't know how else to say it. I mean, I'm trying to be nice.
Some of those voting rules, like the one that you just mentioned, are actually directly from Rosenberg's rules, which are kind of separately adopted. So that is one of Rosenberg's rules of order, is that if a council member's present and doesn't vote, it's affirmative. So you, as a council, have adopted those rules.
Right. I'm suggesting maybe we rethink, because it seems like there's a blending of them. And if the council at large wants to do that, well, so be it. I think there's an opportunity here that's driven by some miscommunication or misunderstanding. And so I'm more structured, and council members come and go. And I would also say, do the same rules apply to the mayor? I don't know, because I didn't know that the mayor even had the right to be involved in the pre-agenda discussion until I reviewed the city manager's contract, and it's listed right there. And so for me, that's a duh moment. But the reality is, I've reviewed that contract multiple times, but my name's nowhere on it because it was created by a previous council. And yet, at the end of the day, I think better than to bury that in a contract with the city manager, I think in the code is a better place, in my opinion. So.
Yeah, and you bring up your rules. I mean, I sent out the email to everybody for the consultant that we have for the team building for the council and the goal setting. I mean, your rules are a little bit over a year old now, and it probably needs to be re-looked at to see what needs to be maybe fine-tuned, go back and see what you need fixed and stuff like that. And that would be probably one of those things that we need to codify.
Again, you have my support.
Okay.
I agree. Thank you.
Okay, going back to the word consensus, and I'm sorry, for a policy to put items on the agenda, are you okay with staff bring something back in the near, probably 2 meetings from now, but if that's okay with council?
I'm a yes.
Thank you. And then also, like the council has said, I really want to thank staff. David was amazing getting out the information. The benefit of having a PIO, it's been really helpful. It allows me to work on other things. But like I say, all the staff was amazing, especially even like yard crew coming out and having to cut up a tree on a rec center. Yeah, the community center for being open and everybody working. Yes, Tina, thank you. But staff was just amazing, and I mean, we learned through COVID how to respond and be ready to go, and this was just shows you that the county sent their people to us, and we were ready to respond. So we really thank everybody that's helped out, and that's all I have.
Yes, thank you very much, Tina, and all of your staff for your service and dedication to our community. We really appreciate it.
Mayor or Vice Mayor Morales and City Council, I do have a bit of an update related to the Hazel Hawkins, Hazel Hawkins Hospital. The City Attorney's Office received a notice from the hospital district requesting that the city participate in a neutral evaluation. The neutral evaluation is a statutorily required step when any public entity, such as the hospital district, declares itself insolvent. So it's similar to a mediation in that the parties involved select an independent neutral evaluator who mediates the process, and the purpose is to give the hospital district and their creditors an opportunity to reach a settlement, if that's possible. So unless the City Council objects, the City Attorney plans to participate in the neutral evaluation process and report back to the City Council. All information that's provided during that neutral evaluation is confidential, and all of the parties that are in attendance are forbidden from disclosing anything that is discussed in the neutral evaluation. So we would likely bring the report back to council in closed session, although I do need to research a little bit as to whether or not that would be appropriate. So as I mentioned, if the City Council doesn't object, the City Attorney plans to attend that or be involved in that process. Okay. And are there any questions?
Thank you. So now, do we have a sense for the amount of time and proposed costs? Because I know that we pay for your services.
You do pay for our services. I don't have a sense of that. The amount of time that it will take us, I don't think is extensive. I initially thought you were asking about the time frame where there's a 10-day period where we need to notify the district that we'll be participating, and then there's believe it's like a 60-day period of time in which we have to choose the neutral evaluator, and it's not just the city but all of the hospital's creditors that are involved. So if you want more information, we can probably come up with some sort of an estimate as to how much time and money it will cost, but I don't know off the top of my head.
Does your firm actually have subject matter experts in this area that would?
I can reach out. I'm not sure off the top of my head.
My concern is it feels like we use you guys extensively, and while I want to be open to it, I also want to be protective of our resource.
Right.
And so, at the end of the day, I think to have somebody from your firm would be most appropriate, specifically given the fact that you may have subject matter experts that have experience in this field that could be the person versus either you or Mary potentially.
Yeah, I do think that, we do represent cities all over the state and counties as well, and I'm sure that some of those have had, in fact, I know that some of those have had hospital districts or other sorts of public entities within their bounds that have been in the same situation, so I would not be surprised if, or I would be surprised if we didn't have someone who had been involved in something like this before. But
I would be supportive of that. Thank you.
And then,
City-
Vice Mayor, then last thing we have is sorry.
Oh,
City
go
clerk,
to
yes.
city clerk and then the police chief.
No reports.
Chief?
I just wanted to advise the council that earlier today we had a swearing-in ceremony at the police department. We've hired our second code enforcement officer, Christopher Dorn. He's worked for the county at juvenile hall for I think almost 20 years, and he's coming to us. So we're really excited about him starting, and he's starting his training, and hopefully see him soon on the street. Thank you.
I don't know. I've been kind of out of it this weekend, so I don't know if we were invited to those swearing-in ceremonies, whether it's fire or police. I personally would love to attend any of those meetings, so if you invite me, unless it's a Raider game, no, just kidding. No? Oh, yeah, we don't have to worry about that one. I'd love to attend those meetings too, yeah. Thank you.
We would rather have you attend a more winning team.
Okay, unfinished business, updates from city council projects. This is where the members of the council may comment on previous requests made to staff members. Mr. Burns, Councilmember Burns?
I have no comments, thank you.
Councilmember Perez? Okay. New business, no items. Miscellaneous, no items. Hollister Successor Housing Agency, no items. Adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Yes.
It only takes 2 votes, I learned tonight, so.
Do you got a consensus on that?
All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Okay. Thank you all. Have a wonderful night. Be safe.
Recording stopped.